I've really been enjoying how these new Space Marines pose and play, and with their improved proportions they certainly look great in action. However, with that also comes an increase in size, and this is no size creep either, it's a size leap. So if you want my easy answer over whether or not I recommend them, then it's a definitive yes. But you should still stick around for more juicy details, which will also be helpful for those concerned with build and size, as this exhaustive video goes through everything you should know about Joytoy's Space Marine 2.
Shut up and sit down.
Hey you scallywags! These are the first 3 brand new figures from Joytoy's new Space Marine 2, based off characters from the video game, featuring from left to right Sergeant Gadriel, Lieutenant Titus, and Brother Chairon. So let's start by going through each one individually and their articulation. This is the protagonist of Space Marine 2, Lieutenant Titus, with his unhelmeted head, which straight out of the box was a bit too shiny for me, so I took a bit of matte varnish to just go over that once and make it a bit more muted on the shininess, so he doesn't look like he's sweating all the time. Good likeness though. The service studs here look as though they are gold when they should be silver. It doesn't look too bad, it could get away with being silver I suppose, but it's actually a great head sculpt. The U on his chest emblem is as ultramarine-y as you can get. Definitely one of my favourites. Pauldron looking nice and clean here. Belt buckle, this is softer plastic. Loincloth is also very soft plastic. Very nice, gets out of the way. Chain from the Inquisition, from his time with the Death Watch. Hope if they make figures of him will be smaller. This is hands down one of the best Ultramarines pauldrons you can get, with that skull in ultra, softer plastic for the purity seals. Not much going on down here, but laurels, or that skull. Again, purity sealed, softer plastic. These things are not on the other two, which is quite strange. Nothing under there. Pouches, can remove those by the way. This power pack is larger than what we've seen before. That U with the skull again there, looking nice. This vents here, I've got new detail, little ribbing there for our pleasure. I love the detail of where the neck plugs into now as well. Articulation starting with the head, which is on a double barbell, which we've become accustomed to, is a bit more limited on this though. Due to that new detail, it does make it more difficult to go back up like that. Down as well, you can get to about there. So tiltage is possible. And go around. There is movement on these vents, both of them. So the main improvement is with the pauldron, how they made it like the new Terminators. You've got a hinge from the shoulder connecting to the ball joint on the pauldron, which allows for better movement. You can see here, ball socket on the pauldron will allow some movement there. You can also see there is a screw now on the shoulder articulation. The butterfly joint there. Move that like that. You can get the arm up laterally about there. There is a bit of movement with the ball, of course, like that. But very nicely done. You can shift down, shift up, or a bit back and forth. Arm goes all the way round. Now there is a slight issue with the butterfly joint on this over the Terminators. Terminators had a larger pauldron, so that means you could hide that butterfly. Twist. Double bend at the elbow. The there's this new sort of elbow joint bit there as well. It's quite interesting. And double barbell at the wrists. Upper movement at the torso here, which is not great. Better at the waist, and together does work very nicely. You can crunch to about there. Go back about there, no gap. Left and right, all sorts of stuff. Jean-Claude is not great. He obviously has a tight ass. Floaty crotch piece, so when you move the leg up, make sure you put the arm a bit under the belt for maximum range. There you go. Nice. We're hindered on this side, but still good. The side skirting's held on a more harder plastic, which I wish they used something like the Terminator's. Twist at thigh does feel a bit more hollow. Double bend at the knee, which is good, but this no longer works. It worked on the older versions of the knee, but now it looks too thin. Can have it so it's more gappy at the top, more gappy at the bottom. Foot goes down on a double barbell joint. Up is not as good. Pivot is not as good on this either. Twist. There is a toe. Wish they had curved this toe instead. Oh well. So all the articulation is there that we're used to, even more improved. The legs maybe are not as good as some we've had before, and they do feel hollow. First it felt like maybe a cheaper plastic, but maybe it's hollow, not sure. It definitely feels a lot lighter than other Space Marines we've had before. Although the articulation for the legs isn't as good as some, it still actually works better than I initially thought it would. Arms work lovely. The head, once you get the double barbell working, you can start making that work a lot better. The arms are a definite improvement and definitely feel smoother. Just get Titus here in a punchy pose. Even the legs, actually, the whole thing is smoother all around. So definitely fun to pose. Next up is Sergeant Gadriel, who out of the three has the worst head sculpt of the three. Got some nice detail with the scarring, etc. But I think it's really his soft features. Nice little cybernetic parts there too. Yeah, it's just something about the soft features that just don't work that well. Maybe needs a wash or something like that. Detail there inside where the neck goes. Down here to the chest. Purity seal here on a soft plastic, which is very nice. It's harder plastic here. And that sergeant skull. Skull there. All the pouches and stuff. This is a nice unique pauldron. It does protrude a bit more out the front bit there in the game itself, I believe. It was quite nice. Let's think here. Really good detail. Back there too. Tiny little skull there. Oh yeah, these little pouches are on just little ball joints you can remove and replace if you like. This thing's a softer plastic as well. Again, I wish the side armoring was held on a softer plastic on the belty kind of bit. Underneath, I think special. Red Sergeant skull. Again, purity seal. Doorway to his soles. Again, softer plastic. Pouch there. Power pack. So there's supposed to be Red Sergeant skull, I believe. The back of that. Nice looking figure. So the only bit of articulation that's going to be different is going to be the legs. but it'll be similar, because this front bit is still on the softer plastic. Front skirting just moves out of the way like that. Works pretty well. So not too much here different from Lieutenant Titus. Would be good if the feet did have a bit more range. I have popped them out a few times, but they still do work. Brother Chairon is next, and surprisingly has the best unhelmeted head straight out of the box. It is a little bit glossy, but actually works on this figure, as you can see a load of his detail on his face, those wrinkles and scarring and things like that. So it looks really good. So I was tempted to dull his shine, but I think it looks alright on him. Chest there. Got a load of Purity seals as well. Pauldron. Ultramarines. Very nice. This thing here does tend to fall down, but you just have to push it back up. Like that. Soft bit there. This is nice. Robotic arm. It's the single bend on there. Just like we've seen before. This pauldron is pretty nice. Again, Purity seal. The U. Then these chains coming along around here. Ultramarines again. This little bit. Would have liked a bit more detail on the cyborg arm. A wash would have been good. Legs are a bit plain. Purity seal there. I do prefer these pouches, they're a lot smaller. Like this little thing too. And his U, I believe, is supposed to be gold. Well, in the trailer it was anyway. Again, good stuff. Chairon's main difference from the other two is his cybernetic arm. This is on a single joint there, so a single bend, 90, can twist as well. Still works surprisingly well. There isn't a twist at the forearm as there is in other iterations though. Chairon's leg movement is less hindered. There's nothing at all hindering the right leg from moving up. There's less nuance to the single bend elbow, but it still works. So while the upper half moves very smoothly, one form of adjustment is with the legs. The thigh armor is riding up a little bit higher than normal, so you just have to put that under the belt for more range with the legs. So now we've looked at each individually, let's see what else they have to offer. Each come with a wealth of accessories which are exactly the same, except for their helmets of course. They each have their own individual helmets, and there is a variation on the bolt rifles as well. Chairon's selection of right hands are cybernetic of course, and they're not as detailed as some previous iterations. Right and left fists for all, which is always welcome, so you can get some nice punching or fist bumping. Right and left trigger fingers for all as well, which are what we've seen before and work well with the weapons. And there is a left and right holding hand for your chain sword. Now, unfortunately, Joytoy didn't include a specific hand to help support the rifle when holding it with two hands, so I've had to use one from my Stern God veterans. This is obviously an oversight from Joytoy. I wish they'd included a specific hand for that as well. There is a manual included with each of the figures to change to be a jump pack version. Stuff here. Remember, this is not a toy. Just take the bits off there and replace them. Easy enough. So it's very simple. All you do is just remove these back parts for the legs. Just come off like that, very easily. No issues. think they're both exactly the same. Just line it there, pop in. Just get the two circular bits in, and then that just plugs in very easily. And they fit in very, very snug. Very nice looking. Backpack comes off. Two holes there that we've seen before. Now I've had to use Vaseline on mine. See there. It's the same jump pack we've seen before, and the pegs are slightly thicker than the new power pack pegs. So you have to be very careful. With the Vaseline, it does help popping it on there, but if you leave it overnight, then it's more difficult to remove. So yeah, be very careful with that, as it can get stuck. Articulation up here, of course. And these things move around very nicely. The actual pack itself is a lot smaller than the new power pack these guys come with, but looks pretty good from the front there. The chainsword is exactly what we've seen from previous iterations before. Out of all of the weapons, I think this is the one weapon that I would have chosen to increase in size by just a bit. Still works pretty well with all the figures though. Both Chairon and Lieutenant Titus come with this auto bolt rifle. Again, this we've seen in other iterations, the strap here as well. I'm not sure if that's accurate to the game, but very nice nonetheless. Gadriel comes with a standard bolt rifle, and this again we've seen before. Very nice looking gun. You can remove the magazine. No detail in there, but very good. And again, in order to hold it with both hands, you do need to sacrifice one of your other holding hands. This is from the Stern Guard veterans. They each come with a holster, which can simply be put onto where one of the pouches are. Just plug it in. And also a holstered gun with a purity seal there. But I won't be using either of these. This is the bolt pistol they each come with. Again, we have seen these in previous Space Marine iterations. Lovely looking pistol. You notice these little spheres here, these little circles. So I got these magnets, little disc magnets, quite strong. And I placed two on top of there, so I can have it magnetized. This one, I removed those little discs and put the magnets in. It's a bit more flush than the other one. The magnets are so that I can actually pop the pistol on there, like that. Because in the game, I don't remember them having any holsters or anything like that. So now I've got it so it just magnetizes onto this side skirting like it does in the game. Like that. I think that works a lot better than having sort of holsters anywhere. So all I've done is put two other magnets on the underneath this part here. And that just allows it to magnetize. So a little simple mod. They each have their own helmets. This is Gadriel's in Sergeant Red. And I think these look better than what we've got before. They look more in line with the video game. Titus's, I think the eyes are slightly more slit than what we've had before. And this is Chairon's. Helmets look really good. And it does actually look like these helmets could fit the heads. So one feature is that each helmet is hollow. There's a space in there for an LED. As you can see, the lenses are semi-transparent with a color. It's got red in this one. My right lens for Chairon's here is not exact. And there's this upper bit here, which you can pop in. So in case anyone was wondering, the upper helmet bit can go on the top there. Doesn't really sit on nicely, but I suppose you get a bit of blue tack if you wanted this kind of look. Yeah. And that's the same for each of them, so you've got an alternate look if you like. So I bought LEDs in anticipation of these figures arriving, and they arrived on the same day. Luckily, they actually fit in. So 9.8mm by 5mm. They just go in like that. These ones are buttons, so I have to press the button. I know there's magnetized ones you can get, which I might look into. But that you just pop in there. Fits nice and snug. And look at that. Those lenses just glow. You've got to put this in precisely so that there's no light bleed. You go and look at that. Even though the right lens for Chairon isn't precise, it still looks pretty awesome. It's a nice little feature. To replace the head, you just remove the unhelmeted head. Very easy to do. And this just plugs in at the top very easily. And you still get a nice little range of movement as well. Looks pretty cool, even without the lights. So I find it a bit easier to remove the top half of the helmet once the head is on the body. Just, I'm having a little bit of difficulty there, but it doesn't normally work. And then so, switch that on, pop it in. When I found out that it had this feature where you can add the LEDs, I thought it might be a bit gimmicky. But in hand, it actually works really well, and it kind of makes it feel a bit more premium with the light up eyes. Obviously, you don't have to use them. In fact, you probably just sort of paint over if you wanted the eyes to pop a bit more. Just paint over the lenses. But I think it's a nice little feature and a good sort of alternate look, especially for photography and stuff like that. I've used a white light for Gadriel. I tried the green one. The green one looked a bit too bright. But you can use a white light for either Titus or Chairon as well. Works just the same as the red. So yeah, there you go. Look at that. You know, look pretty awesome with the light up eyes. So these are all the basic intercessor bodies that we've got from Joytoy over the last few years. As you can see, the Space Mairne 2 buck is a bit of a leap compared to these gradual increases in size and slight changes as well from each iteration, but I think that's for another video entirely. And here's a fun little comparison with two Titus-esque characters released by Joytoy. On the left is 1.0 Erastus, who had the similar kind of look with the helmet, and on the right we have Castus, who was released with an unhelmeted head that looked very Titus-esque. We'll now go through a ton of comparisons against other figures from Joytoy's Warhammer 40k and Horus Heresy. The quote-unquote firstborn Terminator on the left and the latest Terminator on the right, which I think works pretty well with Titus and his buddies. The most recent Gravis captain on the left, who previously towered over the Space Marines, now is basically eye to eye with Titus, and captain of First Company Agamemnon in Terminator armor on the right. Again, I think these guys look pretty good with Titus and his buddies. Two daddies of Ultramarines, Marnius Calgar now looking less imposing against Titus, and Guilliman, who actually I think works pretty well with Titus. Calgar definitely needs a new model now. He looks kind of off with his proportions, and of course is not as tall as Titus. Next up we have a chaplain. He may look familiar to those of you who've played Space Mairne 2, and the Blade Guard captain on the right, again Titus towering over these two. The chaplain could do with another model on par in size with Titus. And here are a couple of custodies who now unfortunately look excruciatingly undersized against this new Space Mairne 2 buck. Named characters Lazarus and Mephiston also suffer against the new Space Mairne buck, as they both look small against Titus when they're both Primaris Space Marines. Grey Knights Voldus and Drago in Terminator armor, usually a bit bigger than Space Marines. These guys look a bit small. I mean, could sort of work, they just look less imposing against Titus. A couple of Space Wolves. Ragnar was one of the bigger figures when 2.0 was first released. Now he is a lot shorter than Titus. Luckily, the Man Mountain himself, Aryak Rockfist, is still bigger than Titus. Some more Space Wolves, this time from the Horus Heresy. On the right, Carl Red Blade, looking, I think, pretty good against Titus. And Greyslayer 1, whose head looks a bit bigger than it should be, but sized quite well with Titus. Some standard Marines from Horus Heresy on the left, Imperial Fists, and a Beaky Boy from the Sons of Horus on the right. I think this sizing actually works with the new Space Marine 2 bucks, as they're a bit smaller. Two named characters from different generations, Tor Garadon on the left, 40k, and Sigismund from Horus Heresy. Sigismund's head looks a lot bigger than Titus here. Two more named characters, 30k Ahriman and 40k Kyvan Shrike. Ahriman actually uses the metal die-cast joints that the Terminators use, and I wonder if this is as small as they could get it, as Titus looks a bit smaller than Ahriman here. And here are some humans from the Imperium. I think the new Space Marine buck actually scales better with the normal sized humans. With this size that Titus and his buddies are now, it's actually more true 118 scale than the previous iterations. The other Space Marines we've got have actually been a bit undersized in 118 scale. The Space Marine 2 buck, I think, still works well with the Necrons. Obviously a bit larger, but I think you can still sort of make it work with these guys. Against the Tau, Shadow Sun is not as imposing as she once was. Titus almost looking eye to eye with her. The other two, of course, are a bit smaller, but yeah, definitely could work with this lot as well. And now for some Tyranids. Tyranid Warrior, of course, is not as imposing, but I think when compared against the trailer, still sort of works with the new Space Marine buck. Final thoughts. So the first thing I noticed when I got these guys out of the box was the feel of them. So they feel quite light compared to the others, and hollow. The others feel a bit more substantial, like there's a bit more weight to them. Don't know if that's really the case, but it's really the feel of the plastic, or how hollow especially the legs feel. The upper body here works amazingly. I think the improvements are really good. The legs at first took a bit of getting used to. I thought there wasn't as much range because of the upper armor of the thighs clashing against the belt. But once you get that under the belt, then you're able to do a lot more posing. Now, the big elephant in the room is, of course, with the sizing. So if that bothers you, then these figures really aren't going to be for you, as these are true 118 scale and tower against the others. For me personally, this is exactly what I've been waiting for, to be able to put together with my other 118 scale figures, and my other figures can just be relegated to the background. But they may not necessarily work with your named characters. Anyway, if you want to get your own Joytoy, please click the link in the description for my affiliates, where you can get Space Marine 2 figures and other Joytoy products. If you like this video, please click the thumbs up for more content, subscribe, and I'll scale you later.